Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MS Dynamics World. On this episode, we are diving into building a secure Dynamics 365 environment, from USG adoption and role design to licensing reinforcement and what's coming next. My guest is Bartosz Spich, VP of Products at XPLUS, and we start with an update on Microsoft's latest plans for enforcing licensing policies. XPLUS is the sponsor of this session, and we also discuss how understanding licensing relates to the broader concept of observability in Dynamics 365. Bart tells us about some of the intriguing scenarios in which better insights based on observation could actually accelerate customers' AI adoption in Microsoft business applications. All right, well, Bart, it's great to have you back on the podcast. How are you? And could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Jason. Pretty good. Hey, everybody. My name is Bartosz Spich. I'm Vice President of Products in XPLUS Global. You may know us from the brand called Executive Formats. Thank you so much for asking, Jason. It's crazy busy time. We just came out from Orlando Summit, and it was great to see multiple people coming in, asking multiple questions. Product discovery is one of the passions we do. Then we went to EMEA directions, and the next week, actually, we are in Portugal on another Dynamics event. So the end of the year is a pretty big rush.
Yeah, it does feel that way. Plenty of travel and in-person meetings, and also a lot of digital stuff happening too. And it's a great time to, I think, catch up. And really, it's a great time for us to talk again, because I think continue the discussion we had on our last podcast that we did together. And I wanted to start with sort of what's currently happening from a products perspective. And when I think of Executive Automats and XPLUS, maybe one of the things to start with is the IP acquisition by Microsoft. It happened last year, and maybe you could give us a bit of an update on what is currently happening at XPLUS from a products perspective.
Thanks so much for asking, Jason. It's pretty interesting time for us from the product perspective. As last year, the acquisition happened of our security application. Microsoft incorporated that this year as user security governance in actual January. This came into 1043 release of finance supply chain management. And till then, we have a great traction. We have a lot of new customers asking specific help in the security section, but also our customers from the testing area specifically, they have a great value out of this acquisition as well, because their test cases can be a source for security access rights. And on the top of that, we actually built another product which is specific for security from the sense of the observations. So the acquisition gave us a lot of fuel to develop new products, to actually combine more under one roof, we can say. We are making a platform of our applications, but also the awareness and the recognition is something which pays off the long time of production of the IP which was acquired. So at the end of the day, it's we are in kind of a different reality. We can put it that way.
And, I think of the IP that Microsoft is now sort of making available to all F&O customers, and the sort of the overall theme that kind of reinforces, which is related to users and licensing. And that's something that Microsoft's also changing a lot, right? What is the status on the license reinforcement approach? Have the changes of date? Have the rollout plans changed?
That was actually a pretty interesting moment when Microsoft told us that they are interested in buying the security part. We had some discussions that they have some bigger plan, but we didn't know that something so big as license reinforcement will come. That was just to mention a flavor of what is coming. And license reinforcement actually changed a lot from how it was designed or how it was enrolled from the hard block, which was planned originally this year. And Microsoft decided to move the date the first time, then the second time. And then when we've been waiting very closely to November, Microsoft came up with that big news that there won't be any hard block as they designed, that by November, you have to have your access rights streamlined. If not, you're going to, users without that license allocation will get blocked on the system. They won't be able to log in. That actually was pretty scary for multiple organizations, because however you're going to take a look on that, security access rights, it's one of the top 5 or maybe even top 3 elements which are missed within the implementation process. No approach, not a lot of partners, they have capacity and methodologies on that. So this component on the majority of customers doesn't work. And if you want to now allocate licenses against users, it's pretty impossible. We hear different statistics, 80%, 90% are incompliant. And November came, Microsoft moved, in October it was known, Microsoft moved the deadline. And now January 15th is just start of soft enrolling. It's not anymore hard block. It is something which starts from 15th of January. So anybody who has renewal after 15th, they actually have much more time to do the redesign of their licenses, allocate the licenses to the users, and be ready. I wrote one short blog post on LinkedIn to show exactly how to calculate that. It is pretty easy. So if I won't kind of explain this in detail specifically today, you can take a look at that. There are some other blog posts from different MVPs which are talking about this. But in reality, if you have your renewal of your license next year after 15th, you have the moment of the day of your anniversary of renewal. If you have long-term contract or that day specifically of renewal, plus 15 days is the moment where you need to be compliant with your licensing. So you can calculate that yourself. If you're renewing this year, you're going to have even more. We have one customer which is renewing licenses on 6th or 7th of January next year. So they actually have 1 year plus 15 days, plus 21 days for license reinforcement. So they have plenty of time. But on the other hand, they are extremely big multinational organizations with multiple complication of security access rights. So indeed, this question is good because this is one of the top problems on the partner side. They need to build their awareness and methodology on security access rights. And if you don't have that, you have a little bit of time to catch up.
My sense is that even if you have a full year, if you're a large, complex organization or you have a large, complex D365 architecture and deployment, that's not a huge amount of time if you have not addressed this before. That's maybe an acceptable amount of time, but not a generous amount of time.
That is so true. Take a look on Dynamics. It's present on Coca-Cola's ground. It's present on Rolex. It's present on some Chanel, some brands which are hyperactive. They have operations in multiple countries and their business is not replicable on every country. It's different everywhere. So in reality, the design of security might be a full year project. And especially when you are SOX compliant, then it's get the madness of the complication. So here it might be not enough. You need to have a big team. Your partner needs to be prepared. So that's a new opening for auditing, new opening for the way how you implement Dynamics.
Yeah, I think at this point, most customers probably are aware of what's coming and maybe the more relaxed rollout might get the best chance of getting them all eventually in compliance smoothly with the new policies. And, I think you mentioned USG, user security governance. Is it well adopted now?
Indeed, the user security governance, now it's available for a while. It went through a few iterations. There was a Jammer group where people were asking Microsoft questions, how it works, and we've been trying to support, and we've been circling back to fix and enhance some features, especially reporting, which was actually done multiple times and redesigned a few times over that cycles from January up to actually September this year. And it's pretty good question because, when I was designing this application in 2020, I had some concepts in my mind when we've been building that foundations and approach. And after January, when it went to 1043 live, I've seen few videos on YouTube where people were describing what those functionalities are doing based on Microsoft documentation. And believe me or not, but I was just shaking my head. What is happening? How people came up with those ideas about those functionalities? They were designed in the opposite way. So end of the January and then a few months in the year, they were pretty surprising for me how some functions were understood. But then a bit later on, we saw some MVPs very nicely describing those features in the way how we actually were thinking about them. Plus, Microsoft actually released a fast track session where we've participated in. So we've actually equalized a little bit how the market should think about this software, this application of user security governance. And so far, especially by Orlando Summit, we had great discussions with people who are using the user security governance. And they actually are happy with the pace. They figured it out either with our help or just on their own based on the videos or documentation how to use this function, these modules. And I think this is one of the nicest impact we've done so far globally around our organization. So I think I can tell it's well adopted by this day.
So it sounds like you've gotten some interesting, or you've had the opportunity to sort of observe some maybe novel ways of using it, at least at first, but that there's maybe standardization now and that people are becoming aligned, Microsoft and customers, and your understanding of how customers are using it. It seems like it's all becoming more aligned.
That's true. So we've actually, user security governance was actually designing the new way how we should approach security access rights. We came up with something called position-based approach. So if you know, in Dynamics in the past, there was a moment where Microsoft decided to, I remember it was acquisition or just was buying access to something called APQC library. I think that stands for American Productivity Quality Center or something like that, which was the agency which was defining how business works across the globe. And that the entire spectrum of different variants of the business processes, which are available all around the globe. The root was from the United States, so a lot of those processes were local for US. That whole library of those processes was incorporated in Dynamics as a baseline for building privileges, duties, and roles. But that was kind of the concept was good, but you had like a generalization of how sales representatives should work, generalization how purchase should work. And you know how, in general, it won't be precise, especially when the money is behind. And based that the licensing actually is based on the access. If you're going to select those very broad roles, very broad duties and privileges, you're going to end up overpaying. And that was enormous amounts. And that's why we've been telling before, it's over 80% of the companies which are using standard roles, standard duties and privileges from APQC, and they are giving 90% more entry points, 90% more access than people are using. And finally, they overpay. Whereas we actually provided a new way of building and designing the roles in the system. And this was very heavily embedded in those functions in user security governance. And the concept is that you go to the business, you ask sales representative what they perform in the system, you record with them those processes based on task recordings, or with our application for testing. That was one of the side products that we had, and we are still continuing to sell as well. So you are able to record, map that business process, convert that business process to duty and the privilege. And if you're going to do full review of one position, what one person does in the system as a sales representative, you build one role for one position. And that simplification actually had the biggest impact because you could do a lot of savings. The access rights were very precise. They were SOX compliance ready because you've been very picky on what you're giving to the users. And on the top of what is most important, it was super effective from the time perspective, from the time manner. You could create multiple duties in a day and even more than one role per day. And that was surprising. And that was one of the biggest change because even Microsoft now is promoting this approach, the roles based on positions, hierarchy-based roles. And that approach, that concept of simplification should be the way to go when it comes to partners, when it comes to implementations, because this is going to give you optimized license cost and high security on your ERP system.
Yeah, it sounds like a really important insight that I think some experts have understood for a long time, but maybe it finally sort of coalesced at Microsoft in some way. I don't know the full story there, but obviously that sounds like it was really well aligned with your way of thinking and what you and your team had already been thinking about and designing. And you mentioned, the observability, observing what users are doing. How does that fit into the security landscape? Or is there anything else you can say about that?
Sure. So observability is something which was on the ERP systems and especially on SAP, an element which is present for a while. And one of the problems is that Dynamics doesn't have that in the sense like the ERP system doesn't have a deep understanding of the user observations of user actions, what people are performing in the operations and day by day to understand what they need and where they are struggling with. SAP has that for a long time, and they even had a lawsuit against their vendor on the observations. And if you're going to Google it, you're going to see how intense and how important observations are for SAP market. And Dynamics actually is a blue ocean for those functionalities. There's nothing like observability with the exception of our product called Executive Automates for user security governance. We've built the first in Dynamics ecosystem product which allows you to observe your system. And based on those observations, we are able to provide you security access rights based on the actual need. So we are cutting for you the ideal access rights based on the actual user observations. And this actually is far more important, not only for security access rights, but actually later on for identifying agent places, identifying much more idea about some common changes in Dynamics. If somebody will change the warehouse behavior from LIFO to FIFO, somebody will change customer credit limit without authorization, you are able to know about that. So the observability is solving so many fundamental troubles of Dynamics that it actually is a very often no-brainer investment, because only that way you'll be able to prepare what is coming for the future.
Yeah, maybe you could share a little bit more about your outlook on, or your vision on where you see observability driving other technology investment, where you see it impacting AI. You mentioned it a bit there, and how it will play a part.
If you think about observations, what does it give you? This gives you full understanding of how organization works. Day by day, you listen for a year of your production system, and you were able to tell on the 12th of February, somebody did A, B, C, and D, and that had impact, and there was a fraud. You were able to identify from the security and auditing perspective everybody who was involved in it, and you are able to build very good foundation of data to satisfy all auditing needs. But that is pretty obvious, because you know what is happening on the system. But if you think about that a little bit more, you actually see that if you have observations on every business user, you are able to tell, hey, they are actually copying and pasting data all day long in different places. Copying and pasting data is one of the biggest error creator. People are taking that entire phrase. People are actually making double pastes into field, and then transactions are going through and they get clogged somewhere. So you need to once again review. There's a firefighter called to fix some issues in production. Somebody needs to do correction notes and so forth. So it's simple. It's just copy and cuts whenever you track them. If you go a little bit up in the complexity, you can think about personalizations in the system. If you do personalization once, that's fine. If you do it day by day, that is something wrong. Then definitely there's additional training needed for people, because they don't use safe views. They are modifying the system over and over. So it is not customized to their needs. And if you think about those two examples, we can call they are pretty synthetic. They are not impacting the business. But think about it once again. We have entire business, how they work for a month, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. You just gather a big amount of data. And out of that, you can actually find places where you can propose an autonomy. You can propose places for agents. So that is something which makes the investment in observability even more important. Sooner you observe your environment, more data you're going to get, more ready you are to propose places for agentification. There are multiple places where you can actually onboard agents, but it will be hard for you to pick those places on your own if you don't know well the business. And if you think about business process, what part is done in Dynamics, it's somehow you need to have that data, what people are performing and what part of the process is actually done in Dynamics relating to that place where I want to embed agent. So we are having a lot of interesting small language models and more machinery under the hood, which helps to build you autonomy of testing, to provide you without business attendees or business attendants. We are able to provide you info what you need to test, because that is based on the observation of the environment. Users are doing A, B, C, and D process. Based on the observations, we are able to tell you where to place agents and what are actually the most effective places for the agents, because we know that over a year time, you've done 1,000 transactions of this type. So I think within the current MCP server uses, all the changes and the pace how it goes on, there is always one part missing, the fundamental part, where I need to do it. And if you'll be able to have those outlined places, for example, by observability, it will be more easier for you to accommodate any new technology, any new agent propositions from Microsoft. That's why I think we can tell that observability is just another, or that's in place that this is a fuel for your rocket, for your AI rocket, which you've got, but only AI or only those agents, they're going to be hard to accommodate when you don't know where to accommodate that. So I think it is good to think about the observability as a revolution from the perspective of understanding where and what I can do to my system to transition it to autonomy in the couple of maybe not even years, but few quarters from now.
Yeah, it sounds like a really understandable or comprehensible way for a company to perhaps begin that planning, if they haven't already, begin envisioning what the future might look like, is first, getting this new way to understand what their business looks like today in terms of user activity. And I guess the other element of that makes me think of is business process. And I know that's something Microsoft is spending more time on with F&O, is identifying business processes, understanding end-to-end processes, and the parts that different users play in that, as well as just the different, rules and flows of those processes, and kind of putting that all together seems like a big piece of that future.
That's totally true. That's why we actually work with few teams, those which are actually working with Microsoft on the business process catalog. And it is pretty fun to see how the small language model that we've built, and we've kind of grow enormous IP right now internally, which is helping to shape out business processes based on the observations. So we can actually tell you based on the business process catalog what processes you perform versus the original catalog, which is starting to be kind of a quote rocket science, but the outcome is good. We are able to how to place it. So the observations can be very low level. Observation can tell you how people are exactly walking for the park. And the business process catalog does one thing, and our model is able to tell you what parts of the routes you've taken. So you are able on the bigger chunks to see how the end-to-end flow works, and you are able on those bigger chunks to find out some inefficiency in the business process. So business process catalog actually gave us that additional grip or additional traction based on which we are able to tell the organization that their users not only are not exactly, quote, clicking the system, but they're performing that operation in the wrong sequence. And that actually can have a big impact for them operationally, but also observations and this catalog can tell you if the system you have designed, the Dynamics implementation you are just performing now as a partner, you are able to check its quality before you go live. You are able to see within UATs if people are testing the system or checking the system in the way how it was supposed to be planned. If they don't do that, you're going to be the first one to know from observations. So yeah, it's just so multi-level and very broad option or a broad topic for observations where it can be used. But I think that just underlines the revolution aspects of it.
And just one more follow-up question. You mentioned small language models. For our listeners, is there a kind of an easy explanation of sort of how small language models fit into this story and why that's an important detail?
Sure. So you have those large language models, which are heavy, which needs power. They need a lot of data, and calculation is done outside. One of the key elements of problem right now with AI is that you kind of have data egress, that data is taken from you and is calculated somewhere else, and it comes back with the answer. And in some cases, it's fine. But when we talk about critical data from organization, if you use small language models, they are on premises on your organization and they will never leave you. The data is left always on your Azure cloud, and the SML is just a container on the Azure cloud, and it just calculates everything what comes from, in that sense, observability in that specific aspect. So those observations are feeding the small language model, and based on that, the system can and AI can make some good reasoning for you based on that. On the other hand, if you're going to do a large language model, you would need to send and consume the enormous amount of tokens on every request you do. So from the security aspect, from the cost effectiveness perspective, these elements are important to use and go the SML direction, not the other one.
All right. Super interesting. I mean, I hope we can continue this conversation soon, because I'm really interested to see where it goes next. And as the kind of F&O customer base comes along on this journey, it should be fascinating to see how it evolves. So, Bart, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me again. Anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
It's super pleasure and great to have such a great community. Great to have the chance to share our passion, Jason, here today and on every other occasion that we've got. The next year, we're going to do a lot of partner activities in the sense that we want to help partner onboard those applications, especially observability and then moving towards process mining and so forth. So let us know. We are very open for working with every partner. We have over 70 partners right now in our portfolio, but we're going to expand and explore. We think that everything that we are talking about, all the products, they are placing us, XPLUS, Executive Automats, as a technology partner for partners. So you can just benefit and build your new revenue streams through that and simply help your customers get better quality of every implementation you're doing with them.
All right. Well, Bart, thanks again for chatting with me here. I hope we can do it again soon.
Big pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, please do check us out on LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.